I'm delighted to welcome our special guest today, Jayne Warrilow. She's a global speaker, best-selling author, and sought-after executive coach. She's the founder of Sacred Changemakers, a podcast and community bringing together people who want to reimagine business and make a bigger impact. She's worked with CEOs and senior executive teams around the world, and despite working with millionaires and celebrities, her true passion is inspiring coaches, consultants, and changemakers to become and do the extraordinary in life and business. If you haven't worked it out already from her accent, she's born and raised in the UK. She's worked with leading organizations and individuals in the United States, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Latin America. Jayne, it's fantastic to have you on the show finally, and really, really, really excited to hear your story. So we've known each other for a couple of years, and I really want to start off by asking you really about your business journey. Did you always want to, to go it alone? What were your aspirations when you were younger?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think I had a number of different aspirations that kind of evolved over time. And it was certainly very early on in my career that I thought I did want to go into business because my parents, I mean, although they were in the restaurant business, which is a very different business to mine, they were self-employed. So I'd kind of grown up, my mom was quite a stellar entrepreneur in her own right, particularly for that time as well. And, she built a number of restaurants in our hometown and I worked in them from being incredibly young. Like I'm talking, well, I was working in them from being about 12, something like that. But when I was 14, I was running the restaurants because every summer my parents would leave for a spectacular trip on the other side of the world and leave me to run everything. So I actually kind of cut my leadership and management chops there. And so I always felt it was something that was in my blood that I would do. And I was always a bit maverick when I was in corporate organizations when I was younger. I always had way too many ideas that were always stifled. So for me, that freedom of running my own business was always something that I think I knew I was always going to do at some point.
And what from working in your parents' business, what were some early takeaways that you picked up?
Well, I learned that it was all about relationships and people, because I was some 14-year-old, young girl. And suddenly I was doing the staffing in the restaurant for people that were twice and three times my age. So I learned very quickly that just because you had a position, it didn't mean that you had any authority. So what I learned was to really make the most of the people that were in the team and use their expertise and lean on people to kind of guide me and show me the way. And so for me, business and leadership, right at a very young age, I learned it was all about the relationships. It was all about the people. And that extended, of course, from the inside of the business, where we had teams of waitresses and chefs and all this stuff going on. And then right the way through to the customers and getting to know the customers and being personal and really caring about everyone that I came into touch with and being consistent. I think that was another thing. Being somebody that was reliable, that they could trust, that they could turn to. And that goes for customers that have got a meal that they're not happy with or whatever it is that the problem is that needs sorting out. From a very young age, I quickly learned that. And I did learn it the hard way because I went in like a boss and learned very quickly that's not the way to get people to do what you want them to do.
I can imagine. And how did it color your view of business in terms of growing up working in your parents' business? Did you start thinking about what you wanted to do yourself? I know you were interested in working for yourself, but did you have any initial thoughts about what you wanted to do?
Not really, if I'm honest. I lived in a bit of a bubble in the north part of England, and my mum and dad were not educated at all. And I knew that I wanted to go to university, but I knew I'd be the first person in my family to do that. So I knew I didn't want to work in catering, which is where my mum and dad were. And it was led by my mum, really. When I say my mum and dad, my dad had very much a secondary role in it all. So that in itself was interesting, because there I had this powerful woman as my mum, and she kind of taught me that you can do anything that you want. And as I left school at 18 and was looking at where I was going to go to university and what I was going to do, I really didn't know. I knew I was good at writing. I knew I was good at kind of design and ideas. And I thought I was going to go into journalism or advertising or something like that. I didn't even know, because quite honestly, back then this was the like mid 80s in the UK, there really, coaching didn't exist as a profession. And I didn't know anything about corporate life, because no members of my family were in like blue collar work. So it was really about looking at, okay, so what is it that I want to do? So I did a degree in communication, psychology, and media studies. I kind of went across a number of things, hopefully to try and find my way. And I actually didn't find my way. I knew I wanted to go into management and leadership. So when I left with my degree, I went into management, and I chose a retail company and got on their management development program. And that was when things really changed for me, because I was on this program and I was thinking that they're not doing this very well, the way they're training this program. And I'd already studied communication studies, of course, and how to influence people and all this. And so I rewrote the leadership. So I had a bit of chutzpah. I rewrote the leadership program that was on and sent it to head office. And then they hired me in leadership development.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think what you displayed actually is what's sometimes known as intrapreneurship, isn't it? It's where you're within a company, you don't accept status quo. You say this can be changed, and they clearly like that.
Yeah.
So where do things go from there?
Well, so from there, I was in leadership development, which in the UK was then kind of like, it had this HR kind of umbrella. Learning and development was under HR at that time. And so then I went to the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development as that was getting set up at the end of the 80s. And I did my training there. I became CIPD, which is like the gold standard in the UK for learning and development, and got my HR as well. And then became director of learning and development for a different retailer that was really just getting into leadership development. So I established all their programs, then went from there to a university in the UK. FEFC funding, so government funding, was diminishing. They needed different income streams. So they wanted to set up a consultancy, and I was hired as the CEO to actually make that happen. So I did that next. And that was really amazing, because that was like me setting up my own business, but underneath the umbrella of a university. And that was where I really got to see what it was that was possible for me, and also kind of what I could do. And therefore I had a number of clients that used to say to me, why are you doing this like for the college? Why are you not doing this for yourself? And so yeah, I mean, the real push for me was I was married. My first husband didn't want me to go into my own business. It was too risky for him. And he was like, we've got like a lifestyle that needs 2 executive salaries. You can't like go into your own business. And so I never did. And then after I had our second daughter, she was a couple of weeks old when he walked out for another woman. And that left me with debt. He literally walked out and went to his job in London, never came back. And at that time, I couldn't make him pay me any kind of maintenance for the girls. And so even though I was on a CEO salary, I couldn't afford the house. I couldn't afford the car that he'd left on the driveway. We had a lot of debt that he'd left us with. And so I had to sort everything out. And I literally had £1,000 in my savings account. And I was like, okay, it's now or never. I was just off maternity leave. I'd got a 5-year-old and a 6-week-old. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. It might sound like high risk, but I'm going down financially anyway. I may as well give it a go. So I got a Regis office. I got an admin, part-time admin to be my receptionist. And that's how I started back in 1997.
It's funny. I think for many UK entrepreneurs, there is this kind of concept of Regis, right? Having this shared workspace.
That's right.
where you can operate, and how exciting.
Yeah.
And I think you raised a good point there, because I think that's what the reality is. It's very difficult for many people to take a step being entrepreneur. It's something that they harbor a desire for, but the statistics bear it out very well that it's a risk that a lot of people don't want to take, because I think statistically people who work for themselves actually earn less. They earn less than people who have jobs. They take less vacation than people who have jobs, and they work longer hours. So, you know, it doesn't sound, on the face of it, doesn't sound very attractive prospects. But then you clearly, you're on a mission. You were on a mission, and what did you do?
So I set up a consultancy. I did what I knew how to do in the early days. And and that's what you just described there. I built the business all wrong. Like I it's almost like a wagon wheel, and Jayne was in the very center of it. So it meant that nothing could happen in the business unless I made a decision, or I was talking to a client, or I brought a client in. And that was exhausting. I mean, I didn't understand business models at that time. I didn't understand, multiple income streams. I didn't understand how to mitigate the risk of what you were talking about just then. And I learned it all the hard way. And so, if it comes down to the actual business model that you create and the quality of experience and the quality of results you get for your clients. But one of the hardest things back then was we didn't have a lot of internet. I mean, I had a one-page website, but nobody was doing business on the internet back then. So it was all like, getting on planes and getting in the car and driving for like it could be a 2-hour journey to London from where I lived in Norwich, or it could have been a 4-hour journey, depending on the traffic on the M25. So, it really was, I was always in the car. I was always schlepping around. It was long hours. I didn't see my girls. Thank God I had amazing childcare. But and so it wasn't until, and don't get me wrong, it was like riding a wild elephant. On the revenue side, we were doing really, really well, but it also cost me a lot. It cost me a lot in time and effort and money. I had to build teams underneath me. And then I got further and further away from the work that I loved. And so, it was actually Jacob's birth that caused a major medical injury that took me out of that business. And thankfully, I had some people that wanted to buy it, because otherwise I had a business that literally I wasn't able to sell, but I sold it internally, thankfully. So it did really well for me.
Good.
But I learned so much from all the mistakes I'd made there. And I certainly was not going to do that again. It's an awful lot easier now than it was back then to go into business.
Yeah, I the thing that I really recall, especially if you go back to the days, I mean, I'm not talking about pre-Zoom, but pre-COVID. I'm talking about things like GoToMeeting. And I do remember right. that I mean, now it's not unusual for me to do as many as like 30 meetings in a week. But in the days of GoToMeeting and Zoom, etc., you'd be lucky if you could do 3 or 4, 3 meetings in a day. I'd exactly that. You'd go into central London, 2 meetings, that's it. And then so you were limited to how much you could do. And you describe something that's so common, that you build this Frankenstein monster that was never the business you wanted.
That's right. Yeah.
So what did you do next? Where did you go?
Well, the first thing I did was I actually took 4 years off, because I was bedridden and not doing well. And I was told that I was not going to live past 2011 due to a medical injury during my son's birth. I was misdiagnosed. There was all kinds of mess that happened around that. But that was interesting, because you see, I had this other world. So I had the business, leadership, strategy, all that world on one side, and that was work. And then on my private life, I'd been on a spiritual path. I'd been doing meditation retreats, Vipassana retreats. I was a spiritual healer and energy healer. And so when I got ill, what happened was, so the first consultancy was everything you'd expect from a full spectrum leadership development consultancy, right? Very mainstream. But then as I was bringing myself back to life and kind of going against everything that the doctor said, I realized that the most important thing was energy, because if I didn't take care of my energy, I couldn't bring myself back to health. And it wasn't just my physical energy, it was physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And so I was having to take the knowledge, let's put it this way, that I had in my head from all of these trainings and experiences I'd had in my own life, and actually start to live them. And that was when, after I was coming back to life and I was healing, and a client called me up actually from Coca-Cola in Hammersmith and didn't know I'd not been working, and said, Jayne, I've got a problem with my team. I need your coaching. Can you come down? And so at this point, this was my first client back. And my husband drove me down to London, because I lived in the north of England at this time. So it was a 4 or 5 hour drive. He drove me because I didn't know if my body would be okay or not. And I walked into these offices, like any corporate offices, to get to my client's corner office. And it was like walking into the living dead. That changed everything for me, Danny, because I realized I had to bring these worlds together. And I wasn't just going to do leadership anymore. I was going to do conscious leadership. And then I was looking at business in this for-profit model at any cost, and realizing the impact it was having on all the employees, and realizing we need to harness the energy of the organization. And it was all about the invisible. Right? That's what I learned from my own healing. The invisible stuff in business is what's running the show. So we need to actually make it visible and harness that in our leadership, in our business strategy, in our relationships with clients. It's things like trust. You know, if there's no trust, you won't have any clients. So, yeah.
So was that what led from that? Because you said it was like walking into the
So because I was coming back to life, I did a master's degree at that point as well. And that got me into academia through Lancaster University in the UK. I was on a consultancy team, as well as doing my master's degree at the same time. I was sent down to London with a team, and we did a whole research base on a couple of consultancies in London. And then I realized I was well enough to go back to work. So from there, it was just Jayne at that point. I wasn't ready to build structures out again. And I was also in the midst of looking to the US, because my Oriental doctor had told me that with the health issues that I was still managing, you don't live in a damp, wet climate. So it was like, okay, where can we go and live that's warm? So it was like Florida. Okay, we'll go to Florida because I speak English. I can still do business there. So it was then about moving the whole family to Florida. And then that was interesting because all my clients were in Europe. I had worked with Americans before, but not actually in America. And so the whole culture shock. And then, so I just started picking up consultancy clients, just like an individual consultant and coach, and got some pretty high level people just through my networks and my contact. And then slowly started to realize, okay, I'll build another consultancy. But I also had coaches coming to me. So I started resonant coaching, teaching coaches my body of work. And I was doing that across the Atlantic, in Europe and in America. And then I realized coaches couldn't make the impact they wanted with their work because they didn't know anything about business, most of them. And so then I was called on for my business acumen, and I started Coaches Business School. And then finally, we get to Sacred Changemakers, where I made the realization that I am going to commit the rest of my career to working with people that want to make a positive impact in our world, people, planet, and profits, not just profits at any cost. So that's what Sacred Changemakers is all about. And I've now closed Resonant Coaching, Coaches Business School. Everything's coming under Sacred Changemakers now, where I'm really pulling my legacy work together.
And I want to know a bit about how you built Sacred Changemakers, because I think that and in particular, this is a podcast about partnerships. So I'm interested to hear the various ways that you have that others that you're. I'm interested to hear how your collaboration with others has helped you to get to where you got to now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, my collaboration with others goes right back to the 1980s, early 90s, when there was no internet. Because one of the things that I did way back then, so people think of like partnerships as being things that you do online, and you do affiliates and all this kind of stuff.
Correct.
And what I want to say is there's a whole world that's wider than that as well. And I will say that partnerships is the #1 way I have built my business through the years. It really has, and remains that today. So way back, I partnered with a financial services company, Allied Dunbar. That's who they were. And there were some consultants in my local area that once a month they would have an evening, and they would put on a buffet and some drinks, and they would invite high net worth, wealthy individuals to come, and they would speak. And then, of course, they would be introducing them to their financial products. So I said, well, why don't I partner with you? And because these people are leaders as well, and I can talk about leadership, and also we can share the costs, and we can share the risk, and also we can share the lists. So that's what we did. And I'm not telling, I can't tell you enough how amazing this was for me. It was like a constant kind of like stream of new people, new leads that I could build into. And remember, in my consultancy, these were high ticket contracts, so I didn't need a ton of clients, right? So that's the other thing, is understanding how you want to partner with people, because it's not always about quantity either. It's sometimes about just getting 2 or 3 really good quality like leads and contacts. And anytime I got a client, like if they were, I don't know, they were the CMO of L'Oreal or something, then suddenly I'd coach them, and then I'd be coaching their team, and then before you knew it, I'd be running a leadership development program for the entire department. And so that's how my work got passed around, and it was all started through partnerships. So there's the offline version, and then as we get further into my career, and online started. When I first landed in America, partnerships was the way I established myself, because remember, I didn't know anybody professionally really when I landed in Orlando. And not only that, it was like a whole different landscape of doing business. It's so different to doing business in the UK here in the US. And so then it was like, I've got to understand how this works. I was going to networking events, and people were like pushing their business cards at me and things. It was all a bit overwhelming. So I just chose a few people to partner with. And then instead of just asking that, I would ask my partners if they knew any other partners that would be a good fit, because that idea of synergy for me was so very important. Like, I'm not into and I know you're not, Danny, this tit for tat exchange that some mastermind groups do. They're like, how big's your list? How many people can you get me in front of? Okay, you're good enough, I'll go with you. That's not what I mean by partnering at all. I look at creative ways to introduce people to, work that I already know and love. So, I make sure that there's a really good fit with my audience, so that we're not just hawking somebody else's stuff to them, but that I can almost guarantee it's, that it's quality, it's got rigor, it's good. And then you see that it's that trust again. Right. And so that continued through really right up until the present day today. And I do join masterminds to get to know the top thought leaders in the industry. But again, I don't partner with all of them, because it's not about quantity for me. It's about quality and finding the right people.
So with partnerships, there's a couple of things that you said that I think that's worth highlighting. Firstly, is that correct? Partnerships is not some 21st century concept. It's something that's been around as long as the wheel. I also, like you, I actually remember in probably pre-2008, or maybe around that time, going to an event at the Swiss Re building, what's known in London as the Gherkin. And it was just that. There was a financial advisor, there was a lawyer, there was an accountant, and they all basically invited their clients along. And so and as a result, everybody got exposure to, each person gave a different talk, and it means they all got really, widespread exposure. And it was quite common to see that kind of arrangement pre-internet, to where where then people started to do that kind of on, not pre-internet, but pre-Zoom, pre-GoToMeeting, when people started to do that online. But I'm also interested just to hear about the fact that when you went to the States, when you're going somewhere where you don't, people kind of think about partnerships. It's easier when you know people, but the great thing about partnerships is it's great when you don't know people, because when you're going to a new market where there's a whole different way of doing things, it's all the other methods are much harder. You know, when I'm having to start from scratch and advertise to a new market, that's really, really difficult. But just building those personal relationships, how long did it take you to get started, to kind of get things up and running in the US?
Well, I was really lucky because of partnerships. I already had some warm relationships, not many. I mean, we're talking about a handful.
Yeah.
And but one of the things that I did was I collaborated with some coaches. So when I first arrived here in Orlando, one of the first things I did was I started up a coaches meetup group in Orlando. And from that, I got to know other coaches in Orlando, some of them very successful, some of them not so much. But through that, we started collaborating on some contracts because they needed good quality coaches. And that's always hard to find. I'll tell you now, good quality coaches and consultants, always really hard to find. So once they met me, they were like, oh, I need some help on this. And then because of that, there was this exchange, this reciprocity that took place where I was going, well, can you help me like understand how business is done here? And, you know, what's the timeline with corporate and all that? Because I just carried on doing what I already knew how to do. And people are lovely. This is what I'd say. Genuinely speaking, like I'm not very good at asking for help. I never have been, right? I think I should be able to do everything all by myself.
It's a British thing. It's a
British, right? Northern British thing, definitely. And so, but once I started saying to people, like, can you just show me? I remember when, I don't know if it was Zoom or another platform. It might have been GoToMeeting, actually. I think it probably was. I was like, I've heard of this GoToMeeting. I was using phone, just audio, where everybody could dial into an audio thing. Can't remember what that was called now.
That was really common.
Yeah. And everybody was dialing into that. And I was like, oh, I want to know how to use GoToMeeting. Will you show me? And people showed me. They were so helpful. They were really good at like just helping me. And through that, you see, I built relationships. And then, so I was just doing whatever came my way until I got my ground. And that took about 2 years for me to find, because remember, a business is not just about what I want to build, right? This is what I learned. It's also the bridge to the clients that I want to serve. And that was when that gave me enough like experience in the local area to go, okay, now I know what I'm doing. And I actually started something called Max Executive Coaching. And that was where I was kind of bridging the paradigms, but still giving people what they wanted, which was more clients, more money, you know, more prestige, more status, whatever it was. But then once I got the job, then I'd start doing what I think of as the real work, the consciousness work, the leadership from the inside out, which is really sustainable and really great success. So I was still marketing in the old way, but then bringing in the real work. And as I started to gain my ground with that, I started to define really what it was that I stood for, which has been a bit of a like evolution over the years, because I'm always before my time with stuff, always. And the market wasn't ready, but then the market started to catch up, and words like resonance, I found, were acceptable. They were not too woo-woo to use in the C-suites of corporate America. So I started finding the language and the words that didn't freak people out and made sense to people. And then I started to bring in my work piece by piece and really framework by framework. And it's evolved incredibly at this point to very powerful work now. So yeah, that's how I did it.
So it's just some thoughts in terms of what you deliver with Sacred Changemakers. Partnerships kind of sit very well with that, because your work here really is all about, it's about business where you're making a difference. And partnerships is also, it's about a form of business development that it doesn't have the sales focus. It's not about trying to sell to people. It's much more about trying to help other people.
It is. It's that value first approach, isn't it? And I think, you know, this is where I say, like, it goes right back to my childhood and realizing that business is relational. and realizing that it's all about trust and relationships. So really really getting to know someone who could potentially be a new partner, making sure that we resonate, and not just that we resonate, but our audiences resonate as well, because they're not the same people as us. But understanding where I could add value for them, where they can add value for me, I think is really, really important. And I have seen in a lot of like people that do partner, sometimes they forget that, right? And for me, it's that beneath the surface, deeper relationship that I look for with my partners, because I want someone that, and this is what's happened now, is my partners are not just partners for my business, they're partners for me, they're my support network.
Exactly.
Like I've got so many people that I can call on if I have a problem that needs solving, if it's a tech issue, because I'm not that great with tech, although I'm a lot better than I would imagine. But it's all those things. It's like I can just call people up and go, hey, would you just give me 30 minutes? I just need to walk through this problem. And sometimes it's just facilitating me and my thinking. And other times I need advice. And they do that with me too. That's what it means, I think, to have true partners. I don't feel alone. It's almost like they're not in my business, but there's like this dotted line of colleagues that are just phenomenal at what they do. And we all help each other out. Isn't that how business should be?
It should be. And it's the fact that people are always so delighted to support you. There isn't this kind of, there isn't this kind of begrudging, do I have to? Like people want to help you. I think that's the difference. And I actually think that mindset extends into the relationship you end up having with your clients. I had a meeting with somebody yesterday who, she's an expert on generating appointments for clients. And she said that she has, over the years, she was a top salesperson. And she said her focus is more now on creating situations where her clients are getting into conversations with people who are a fit. And she said the difference is when she was working in this kind of very heavy sales environment where you use all these techniques to close people, she said the relationship always ended up feeling very transactional. Whereas when she worked in this kind of environment where it's more about putting together two people who are a fit for each other, it doesn't have that same transactional feel.
No, it really doesn't. And you get like good people together and the most amazing things happens in the dynamics of the relationship that neither of you could anticipate if you're open to the possibilities. And so that's why I have I call them just virtual coffees. It's like I just catch up with my partners and I just we just shoot the breeze. We see if we can help each other, where we're up to, what's challenging, what's great, what's working, what's not, those kinds of things. And then always something bubbles up from that conversation that, wants expression. I would say in this way, wants expression through us, but maybe we're not consciously aware of it yet. And all kinds of amazing things start to happen. So it really is interesting when you go, like you say, beneath the transaction to see what really lies there.
I think there's a certain creativity, when you're putting your heads together, because often as you're talking, you're starting to think, actually, there's someone who I think could benefit from talking to you, or I need your help with something. So you create just through your conversations that you. My experience of partnerships is that you're often creating relationships that you didn't realize you were going to create. You're not coming onto this call thinking I've got someone I need from you, or I've got someone I want to introduce you to. Often you're having a conversation, and as you're talking, you're thinking, actually, there's something we could be doing here. And that's what I love about it. It's often this discovery process. That where you are before your discussion with each other, you're in a very different place afterwards. It's that's fantastic. So I've got a question for you. If people want to find out more about your program, where should they go?
Yeah, so everything's housed at sacredchangemakers.com, from our podcast right the way through. And you've heard me talk quite a bit today about trust and the fact that business is relational. On there, we have a free quiz called the Trust Quotient, where you can have a look at how you're building trust in business right now, and it'll give you a score. And we also have a Trust Factor Masterclass, which is an evergreen. So these are resources to help you to, if you are in business for yourself and you are interested in this deeper sense of change and being a positive force for good in the world, then we're a good place to find some resources that can help you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jayne. It's been fascinating listening to your story.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. It was my pleasure.
So you've been listening to the Power of Two podcast. To find out more about me and more about us, go to www.captainjv.co.uk, and we look forward to catching up with you again on our next episode of the Power of Two.